Dr. Carter, thank you again for joining us today. I appreciate you being with us. I know over the last few weeks, we've been talking about our brain, our mind, mental health, and last week we really worked to remove some of the stigma that's around this idea. But today we want to talk a little bit about, personally, how do we navigate this with people that we love? So I know for me, when it comes to people that I love and people that I know that are in my life that might be struggling when it comes to mental health, I don't always know what to say, but I know that I want to say the right things, and I know that I want to be helpful. And so just to kick things off, what would you say to that, and how can we come alongside of our family and friends who are walking that journey?
The first thing I would say is thank you. As a mental health professional, I know that social support plays a huge role in the healing process for my clients. And so anytime they have good support, it just facilitates how well they do in therapy. I'm only with these people an hour a week, right? So I only get to see my client for an hour, and then the rest of the time they're off in the world. And so knowing that they have loved ones, they have a supportive community behind them, I think is really refreshing to know and encouraging to know. So thank you for that. And I would also say, make sure you're taking care of yourself. Caregiver burnout is real, and it does no good to yourself or the person that you're trying to care for if you never take time to replenish yourself. So get into a good self-care routine. Again, taking care of your mind, your body, your spirit, and if necessary, go to therapy yourself if you need some additional support. There's also support groups out there for family members, for people who have mental health problems. So you can get together and share ideas, share resources. If you can't find one, maybe you can create one, even in your own church.
Realistically, what does it actually look like to provide support and care when oftentimes we may not understand the fullness of what somebody is working through?
There's a lot of listening. I think listening, asking questions, trying not to make assumptions. Really, ultimately, you're building relationship. Even though the person you're caring for may be your own child, maybe your spouse, it's a different type of relationship when you're talking about mental health, because that's something so personal and so sensitive for some people. And so you're really trying to meet them where they are and move from there. So, for example, people who have depression, for some of them, it's really hard to leave the house. And so coming out to, have coffee or go to the movies is not something that they're necessarily going to do. But if you offer to come over there, bring dinner, have a movie, just relax with them, they may be more willing to do something like that. Teenagers spend a lot of time in their rooms, particularly if they're depressed or anxious. Parents have the tendency to want to, hey, come on down, let's have dinner, or let's watch this show. Meaning very well, good intentions. But for the teenager, that's just their room is their comfort place. And so maybe the solution is for you to go to them, hey, can I sit and watch, Netflix with you in your room, or can I listen to music? And you don't have to say much. You don't have to say anything, really. Again, just being present with them makes a big difference. Also, sometimes caring for people is doing the hard things. And so if you have a child, for example, who is having some suicidal thoughts, you have to get that child to the hospital. A lot of parents sometimes will just say, well, I can watch them, I'll put all the pills away and the knives away and it'll be okay. But if your child really wants to hurt themselves, they need to be in the care of mental health professionals who can tend to them and get them stable emotionally. Same thing with addictions. Taking a person to the rehab facility is a difficult thing to do, but it's a necessary step for their healing. And so sometimes, really being there for them and caring for them is doing things that are really challenging.
When it comes to that, what are some other cautions that you would have in terms of approach when you're coming alongside of somebody? What are some other potentially harmful things that could be said or that could be done?
I think difficult conversations need to take place in the context of a healthy relationship. So the first thing I would ask is, are you the right person to have that conversation? If you're typically someone who, maybe you get into arguments a lot with this person, or there's a power struggle, or, this person just typically doesn't take your advice anyway,
Right.
You may not be the right person to bring this up,
Sure. Right.
Maybe there's someone who has a more intimate relationship with that individual who would be better suited to have that conversation, or the two of you together can meet with that person to have that conversation. I also would avoid the ambush approach.
Right.
We don't need to have interventions.
Sure.
I think that can feel very alarming to
Right.
an individual to walk into a room and there's like 5 or 6 people there to talk about their mental health.
Sure.
That's stressful.
Right.
And so you want to make sure that you let the person know ahead of time, hey, I'd like to talk to you about a few things. Is there a time when we can sit down and meet? And you want to make sure there's no distractions. You can talk uninterrupted and really get across the points that you want to say. Also, you don't want to assume that you know what's happening with a person. You want to ask them what's going on. Share your observations as well. For example, you might say, I haven't noticed that you've been spending a lot of time with us. You're kind of withdrawn from us. And I'm wondering if we could talk more about why that is, what's going on. Instead of saying, you haven't been spending time with us, I think you're depressed,
Sure.
right? You're making an assumption about what's going on with that individual instead of opening up a conversation to discuss what is actually happening.
That's great. Dr. Carter, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much.